Welcome to The Discerning Mother, the podcast for Jesus-loving moms who want to tune out the noise and tune into God's design for motherhood. I'm Brigid, a board-certified women's health coach, holistic health practitioner, birth nerd, and homeschooling mom of 5. I help moms to heal their minds and bodies, trust their instincts, and embrace the beauty of the way God created them. Here we talk about birth, hormones, motherhood, faith, and anything else. Let's go. Alrighty, welcome back. Today I want to talk about something that I've been requested a lot to talk about actually, which is why your body might not have a period after miscarriage or pregnancy, and essentially like the science behind anovulatory cycles, right? And so before we get into it, I really want to give you some definitions because maybe you don't know some of this terminology that I'll be using, or maybe it's just a good refresher. So ovulation. Ovulation is when your body releases a mature egg. It's also called an oocyte sometimes. And this is released from the ovary, usually once per menstrual cycle, occasionally twice or more times, especially if you have twins that run in your family or if you're taking some sort of fertility medication. Ovulation is necessary for fertility because it provides the egg that then can be fertilized by the sperm. Occasionally, though, you have a menstrual cycle where bleeding occurs, but then no ovulation happens. And the cycle might kind of look a little bit longer or could look the same, but again, essentially no ovulation actually happens. And with this, the uterine lining may shed irregularly, but without like the hormonal changes from ovulation. And so in this case, this is especially common postpartum. If you're nursing, you might have a very long anovulatory cycle. So again, anovulatory, no ovulation. I'm also going to be talking about the HPO axis. The HPO axis is a hypothalamic pituitary ovarian axis. This is a really important pathway because this is the pathway that the hormonal system that regulates the menstrual cycle. So we're going to talk about in this the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, and the ovaries. Because women are really unique where we have pituitary hormones, but then we also have ovarian hormones, and they have to work together in order for ovulation and fertility to really occur. Depending on how things go, I might also talk about GnRH, which is gonadotropin releasing hormone. Again, GnRH. This is a hormone from the hypothalamus that essentially signals the pituitary to release LH, which you probably have heard of, and FSH. These are the things that drive ovulation. You probably have heard of LH and FSH. LH is the luteinizing hormone. This is like those little test strips that you can pick up that you can dip into your urine and you can see when that LH spikes right before ovulation. You can also test your FSH, which is your follicle stimulating hormone. FSH is going to stimulate the growth of ovarian follicles, whereas LH stimulates essentially like the egg release. We also have progesterone. Progesterone is a hormone that is produced by the ovaries after ovulation, and it essentially stabilizes the uterine lining in preparation for a potential pregnancy. This is the hormone that needs to stay high during pregnancy in order to keep that lining so that the baby has somewhere nice and cushy to stay. Estrogen we're going to talk about. This is going to help build the uterine lining. It regulates reproductive tissues, and it works with progesterone to maintain the cycle. Prolactin is a hormone that comes from the pituitary gland that produces milk, right? High prolactin suppresses GnRH, which then can delay ovulation and menstruation. This is why if you're nursing, you might have a delayed ovulation and menstruation because of this one. We have cortisol, which is a stress hormone. We have, let's see what else is there. I think that's all that I really want to touch on as far as definitions go. And if you have any questions on these, let me know, because I know that some of it's a little bit science-backed and maybe not I love the science part of it, but I know it's not everybody's cup of tea. Okay, so I want to talk about the hormonal shifts after pregnancy or miscarriage. So during pregnancy, your body produces really high levels of estrogen and progesterone. These are necessary to maintain uterine lining and support the baby's growth. Progesterone in particular helps maintain the pregnancy and keeps the uterus essentially happy, right? So it's essentially going to be the thing that keeps it in a state of inactivity or dormancy, which is again important until you're ready to have the baby. After birth, or after a miscarriage, estrogen and progesterone plummet like rapidly. And this also happens in your cycle as well, just not to the same degree. But this sudden drop triggers the body's recovery process. And this is essentially saying like we need to heal before we create a new life. happens typically on days 2 to 3 after you have a baby, which is why a lot of women on those day 2 and 3 feel really pretty terrible and sad and have maybe like the baby blues, because again, your hormones do like a sharp drop. At the same time, if you're nursing, if you're having lots of skin to skin, if you've been around your baby a lot, smelling them and everything like that, your prolactin levels are going to rise. Prolactin is essential for milk production. It also inhibits the GnRH from the hypothalamus. And again, that's going to inhibit the LH and the FSH, which is actually really important because if you think about it, the way that God designed our bodies is that we have a baby, and then if we are nursing that baby on demand, and I don't mean like every 2 hours or so, I mean on demand. So like sometimes that might mean that you're literally nursing for hours at a time, especially at night. That's whenever it's the most potent, if that's the right word. I don't know if potent's the right word, but that's the most effective. I don't know. You know what I mean? And so that's going to really give you the best spacing that your body needs in order to say like, okay, we're good. We are healthy again. We're not trying to support another baby, so therefore we can have another baby, right? But on a lot of times, especially nowadays, we have pacifiers, we have pumping, we have moms away from babies due to needing to work and sort of that sort of thing. And so therefore that like natural separation process doesn't work quite as well. Okay, now we have anovulatory cycles. Anovulatory cycles are cycles where bleeding occurs without ovulation. So essentially your body may shed the uterine lining, but there was no egg released. So no corpus luteum was formed, no progesterone surge. And this matters because again, ovulation is a key marker of fertility and hormone balance. Without ovulation, even if you see bleeding, your cycle isn't fully functional. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like this is very common after pregnancy. It's very common after a miscarriage or any sort of physiological stress because your body's really prioritizing survival over reproduction, right? And so again, if you have like 1 or 2 cycles like this, don't stress. Just keep trying to nourish your body. If you're nursing, like it's not a big deal. Just keep trying to nourish yourself and like rest and recover. When this becomes a concern is when this happens over and over again. And you might notice that it's an anovulatory cycle if you never really get any changes in your mucus pattern. So maybe you always feel really dry and you never really get that like surge of like swollen, really wet mucus. That could be a sign that you are having an anovulatory cycle. Or if you're having really long cycles. So for example, if your luteal phase is over 16 days long, and your luteal phase is the phase after ovulation, if you catch ovulation, but before menstruation. So it's kind of like this nuanced thing where sometimes you can technically look like you're ovulating, but again, even if you do ovulate, your luteal phase has to be at least 11 to 16 days long in order for your body to actually be able to prepare for that pregnancy. If it's shorter than that, it's not enough time. And if it's longer than that, it's too much time. So this is a really nuanced, complicated flow of things, I suppose. So why do anovulatory cycles happen from a scientific standpoint? Stress. Stress is a huge one. Stress shows our bodies that we are not prepared. We are not in a state where we can have a baby. We're not ready for that right now. And so therefore, it delays LH and FSA release, and therefore it delays ovulation. Another big one is sleep disruption. Sleep disruption is huge because poor sleep decreases melatonin. That disrupts the hypothalamic, the HPO axis, that hypothalamic pituitary ovarian axis. That is what's necessary in order to coordinate for menstrual cycles. Okay, and so again, when you have poor sleep, that's going to decrease melatonin, disrupt the HPO axis, which then is going to tell your body we are not in a state that we can have a baby, right? And then therefore no ovulation. The other huge one is metabolic stress and inflammation, okay? This one is massive because our bodies work really, really well, but they're also under an enormous amount of stress nowadays based off of what it is that we're putting in our body. So metabolic stress happens when the body senses that energy available is low or that our internal systems are under strain. This can happen because of caloric restriction, nutritional deficiencies, things like not enough protein, not enough healthy fats, not enough zinc, magnesium, vitamin D, whatever. Okay, and so today, many people eat a really high diet or a diet high in processed foods, refined carbs, vegetable oils, which are really calorie dense but nutrient poor. Micronutrients like zinc, magnesium, vitamin D, B, and fatty acids are often missing as well, and these nutrients are critical for hormone production. Hormone production, including estrogen, progesterone, and thyroid hormones. So without this proper nutrition, your ovaries don't have the building blocks that they need and actually to produce healthy eggs and support regular ovulatory cycles. The other thing is that diets high in sugar and refined carbs lead to spikes and crashes in blood sugar. This is going to stress the body metabolically. And over time, this can cause insulin resistance, which is kind of a hot topic nowadays, but I mean, it's so true because insulin resistance disrupts hormone balance, especially with androgens and ovulatory hormones. This contributes to irregular cycles and ovulation. Even postpartum or miscarriage, poor blood sugar control can really delay the return of normal cycles because, again, your body's prioritizing stabilizing metabolism over reproduction, right? So again, this is so, so important. We also have, it's rampant nowadays, processed foods, right? Gut dysbiosis, environmental toxins, sedentary lifestyles. These all contribute to systemic inflammation. Chronic inflammation interferes with the HPO axis, right? And this is going to suppress LH and FSH from being able to be produced. This effectively halts ovulation. So in other words, when you eat these foods, your body's reading like inflammation as a sign of danger, because again, it's their cells. They can't understand what's going on from the outside. So they just have to use the information that's given to them. And when they're given junk ingredients, they're going to think like, oh, we're not in a time of prosper. We can't reproduce right now. And that's going to delay reproductive function until conditions improve. We've also overburdened our metabolism. So modern stress, sleep, irregular meals, nutrient-poor diets, like these push the metabolism into a state of stress adaptation, which increases cortisol, disrupts the thyroid function, and prolongs the anovulatory cycles. And so your metabolism is the foundation for hormonal health. So if it's under strain, ovulation and menstruation cycles are delayed. Like no matter what you do, you can pop like pills, you can do whatever, they're going to be delayed no matter what. Because ovulation is extremely sensitive to energy availability, nutrient status, and metabolic balance. And unfortunately, our modern diets and lifestyles don't leave the body in a state of metabolic health. They leave it in a state of metabolic caution, which prioritizes survival over fertility. So we really need to support the metabolism with whole foods, as unprocessed as possible, adequate protein, healthy fats, micronutrients, stress management, sleep, gut health. These are all things that are so, so, so important. And it doesn't have to be anything crazy. Like you don't have to do any specific diet or anything like that. What you can do is just like stop eating seed oils. That's one of the biggest things that you can do because they're so inflammatory, right? So instead of cooking with canola oil, cook with olive oil or avocado oil or butter even. And then you can also stop eating processed grains. So things like pretzels, chips, bread even. We really need to get back into that. Eat whole foods. It doesn't matter if you want to do the carnivore diet or the Mediterranean diet or be vegan, whatever it is that you want to do, like really try to just eat whole foods, and that's going to make such a difference. Everything that I just talked about also affects your thyroid. And thyroid dysfunction is massive nowadays, especially there's so many women who have PCOS, and both hypo and hyperthyroidism can influence and interfere with ovulation because thyroid hormones are really linked to the HPO axis. So big takeaway is that missing a period is usually your body prioritizing rebalance and repair. It's not a permanent problem. Okay, our bodies are so smart though, and I think it's like 3 days or something that if you give your cells good energy for 3 days, it can like totally change things around. And so again, how to support your recovery naturally is nutrition. Get adequate protein. They say 1 gram per body weight. I know that might sound like a lot, might feel like a lot. It's actually easier than you might think. Get those zinc, magnesium, remineralize your body. So often our water supply is just absolutely atrocious. And we're not getting the vital nutrients that we need from our water. Get healthy fats. Fats are actually very, very necessary for your ovarian health, for your endocrine system function, and also for your brain as well. Stress management. So lower those cortisol levels. Move your body. Breathe. Take deep breaths. Like take a deep breath right now. Pray. Manage your stress however you can. Sleep. So even fragmented sleep, which is hard whenever you have like a little baby, but that can even delay hormonal recovery. So really resting is essential. And then monitoring your cycle, like tracking your cycle, know what's happening, figure out your cervical mucus, your basal body temperature, whatever it is, like support your body in a way that doesn't just bring back your period, but it restores the proper ovulatory cycles as well. Right. So the message that I want you to know is that your body's so resilient and that missing periods after pregnancy or miscarriage like doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. It's just a signal, right? It's a protective biological response. And most women will see their cycles return naturally once their body has healed and stressors are managed. Okay. And so by understanding anovulatory cycles and the science behind them, you can stop like worrying. You can start supporting your body in a way that actually is going to change things. You can regain confidence in yourself. And the biggest thing that you can do is to just like do one little thing at a time. You don't have to overthrow your entire diet. You don't have to change everything about the way that you live. Do one little thing. So like right now, if you're drinking out of a plastic water bottle, get a glass water or a metal water bottle instead. If you are cooking with canola oil, throw the canola oil away and get olive oil instead. Like do one little thing and you'll start to notice a huge difference in your health. Right? And if you need anything at all, please reach out. I would love to hear from you. Message me on Instagram. Make sure to share, like, review, whatever you do with podcasts so that everybody else can hear this as well. And thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.